All right. Good evening. Um, I'm going to look at some information, and hopefully you all will look at it too and see if any of this stuff makes any sense at this point in time. Something's got me wanting to question all this, but so it doesn't matter. Let's just take a look. All right. So in browsing, I was looking at different things that happened in past history, and of course, I never believe in the times that they tell us. So I wanted to see if I can compare a few things. And upon comparing, I find a few other things, and we're going to just look at all of it. Somebody's going to see it and make sense of it. Somebody else, a little bit of anything you see in this might explain something that somebody else might have stumbled across, and might be helpful, but we're going to make sense of what we're seeing regardless. So it's execution of Charles the First, and this is January 30th, 1649. All right, so it's just this one page. We'll go through it real fast. All right, so on the 30th of January, 1649, King Charles the First was beheaded outside banqueting house in Whitehall. The assembled crowd is reported to have groaned as the axe came down, although the monarchy was later restored in 1660. The execution of Charles I destroyed the idea of an all-powerful and unquestionable monarch. So the beheading of Charles I was to prove a point. Uh, yeah, we can put anything down, right? You can see that there. Disagreements between Charles I and Parliament had been simmering for several years. Charles had been exercising too much power, such as raising taxes unreasonably and imprisoning without trial those who did not pay up. Civil war broke out in 1642, and although Charles' royalist army had the upper hand at first, his advantage did not last for long. By May 1646, Charles surrendered. Parliament claimed the king had a wicked design totally to subvert the ancient and fundamental laws and liberties of this nation, and that he had levied and maintained a civil war in the land. It was decided after the royalists had been removed from Parliament and the opinion of the House of Lords ignored that he would be executed. And they give you an image, right? All right, so whatever to that. But it says in 1649, right? So okay, I was like, all right, well, let's go back to Europe and look in the 1600s, right? So they tell us, uh, BCs, ADs, and all this shit, and I'm like, yeah, fuck that shit. So 1649, and I start looking at people from that era, and that time era, right? So it's like 1696 to 1781, right? You have a Russian general named Petrovich Ganable. So I was like, okay, is this a black guy? Okay, all right. So 1649, all right. So I was looking at that, and then, of course, I had to go look up that guy, this guy right here, all right. I had to go look him up, see what's up with that. And so Abraham Petrovich Hannibal, also Hannibal or Hannibal, or Hannibal. That's funny. Hannibal, right? Put him in jail. He eats the flesh of people, right? So Hannibal or Hannibal or Abram Hannibal or Abram Petrov, right? Russian, 1696, 14th of May, 1781. I must, the timeline, right? Life was an Afro-Russian. Notice they have Afro there. So if there was any confusion, Abram Petrovich was an Afro-Russian. So he's in the land of Russia, and he's an Afro, right? Nobleman, military engineer, and general. Kidnapped as a child and presented as a gift to Peter the Great. He was raised in the emperor's court household as his godson. Hannibal eventually rose to become a prominent member of the imperial court in the reign of Peter's daughter, Elizabeth. Right? So is that a Queen Elizabeth? He is the great-grandfather of the author and poet Alexander Pushkin. All right, so let's go to Peter, right? Peter the Great, the Great's Negro. Okay, so Peter the Great's more Russian, traditional translated as the Negro of Peter the Great. So we're still dealing with Afro peoples. It's an unfinished historical novel by Alexander Pushkin, written in 1827 to 1828 and first published in 1837. The novel is the first prose work of the great Russian poet. A little background. Pushkin, we don't need background on Pushkin. Plot summary: the novel opens with a picture of morals and manners of the French society of the first quarter of the 18th century, with the Negro's life in Paris, his success in French society, and his love affair with a French countess, but summoned both by Peter and his own vague sense of duty. Ibrahim returns to Russia. The following chapters, full of historical color and antiquarianism, sketch the different strata of the Russian society: ball of the Winter Palace and Boyar's dinner, the Boyar Gavilla, blah 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 blah. Alright, so you have translation history, sources, the Blackmore of Peter the Great. So we know what a Blackamoor is, and we understand that Peter the Great, who took in Petrovich, right? So let's see, let's go back here. Early life. The main reliable accounts of Gannibal's life come from Peter the Great's Negro, the Blackamoor. Pushkin's unfinished biography of his great-grandfather, published after Pushkin's death in 1837. Scholars argue that Pushkin's account may be inaccurate due to the author's desire to elevate the status of his ancestors and family. So we're going to say it's fake because, you know, them niggas is slaves and there'll never be nothing else, right? There are a number of contradictions between the biographies of Pushkin and the German novel The Blackamoor of Peter the Great, based on his grandfather, and a historical biography by Gannibal's son-in-law Rotkirk was largely responsible for the myth, propagated by some earlier historians, that Gannibal was born in a part of what was then the Ethiopian Empire. Now, let's just take all this in. So we go over here to the Ethiopian Empire, right? Now remember, we started looking around the timeline of 1649, right? So I wanted to look around this timeline. 1649. The Ethiopian Empire, also known as Abyssinia, right? We've already heard about this. Abyssinia, the Europeanized form of the Arabic al-Habash, was a kingdom that spanned the geographical area covered by the northern half of Ethiopia. It existed from approximately 1137, beginning of Zog dynasty, until 1974. Now look at that, right? Abyssinia, right? From 1137 to the beginning of Zog dynasty, which 1137, which is the beginning of the Zog dynasty, until 1974, right? When the Solomonic dynasty was overthrown in a coup d'etat. Alright. So, again, you know, they give you these timelines, and they tell you everything is crazy with these times, but I'm saying, if you look, 1137 in 1974, right, when the Solomonic dynasty was overthrown in a coup d'etat, following the British occupation of Egypt in 1882. Now, here's the problem. I see a problem here. From 1137 to 1974, and Solomonic dynasty was overthrown. Now, when the Solomonic dynasty was overthrown, wait a minute. It existed from approximately 1137, the beginning of the Zog dynasty, until 1974. So, Abyssinia is the beginning. Abyssinia is the Zog dynasty, beginning in 1137 and falls in 1974. And then following that, the British occupation of Egypt in 1882. Ethiopia and Liberia were the only two African nations to remain independent during the scramble for Africa by the European imperial powers in the late 19th century. Right? In 1974, Ethiopia is one of the only three countries in the world to have the title of emperor for its head of state, the others being Japan, which still has the emperor as its nominal ruler, and Iran under the Pahlavi dynasty. It was the second to last country in Africa to use the title emperor, the last being the Central African Empire, which was implemented between 1976 and 1979 by Emperor Bokassa. Now, following the British occupation of Egypt. So, 1882, right? The British are occupying Egypt, but in 1137 to 1974, the Solomonic dynasty or the Zog dynasty, right? Okay, let's look it up. Okay, let's go next to Abyssinia. Abyssinia, you can see here it's in Ethiopia, right? It's right there. The Zog dynasty. The Zog dynasty was a historical kingdom in present-day northern Ethiopia, centered at Lalibela. It ruled large parts of the territory from approximately 900 to 1270. All right, so wait a minute. The Zog dynasty. Let's bring this down. All right, the Zog dynasty until 1974. But right here, we have the territory. It ruled large parts of the territory from approximately 900 to 1270. Now we're talking timelines. We already did the video where we talked about how the Vikings came out of the lowlands, joined up with war bands, and began to go out and conquer, which started around 600, 700, right? And they began conquering until they finally got what they were after, right? So from 900 to 1270, when the last Zog king, Imaknen was killed in battle by the forces of Yekunu Amlak. The name of the dynasty is thought to derive from the Ge'ez phrase Ziaga, meaning dynasty of the Aga. Now, it's funny, but if you think about some of the names in this hemisphere, these names kind of resemble Yekunu, Amlak. Doesn't this sound like South American and Central American names, right? So I'm just saying. The name of the dynasty is thought to derive from the Ge'ez phrase Ziaga, meaning dynasty of the Aga, in reference to the Aga people that constituted its ruling class. Zagwe's best-known king was Gebre Meskel Lalibela, who is credited with having constructed the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. David Buxton has stated that the area under the direct rule of the Zagwe kings probably embraced the highlands of modern Eritrea and the whole of Tigray, extending southwards to Wag, Lasta, and Damut, Walo province, and thence westwards towards Lake Tana, Begimdir. That sounds like a Indonesian type word right there. Begimdir. Unlike the practice of later rulers of Ethiopia, Tadis Tamrat argues that under the Zagwe dynasty, the order of succession was that of brother succeeding brother as king, based on the Aga laws of inheritance. Alright, so around 960, Queen Gudit destroyed the remnants of the kingdom of Ascom, causing a shift in its temporal power center that later regrouped more to the south. For 40 years, she ruled over what remained of the kingdom, eventually passing on the throne to her descendants according to other Ethiopian traditional accounts. The last of her dynasty was overthrown by Maratakla Hayamanat in 1137. Now, first and foremost, we're talking about Ethiopia, and Ethiopians, what they show us today, doesn't appear to be the same type of Ethiopians that is being discussed here with the Amlak and Aga people, right? You can see there's a difference. I'm just reading and you reading with me, so you can see that there's a difference. We're talking about Ethiopia, right? History of Ethiopia. So before we go any further, let's see if we can find, let's see, Kingdom of Aksum, right? So let's look at Aksum. Alright, so this is Akusmite people, right? Aksum, Ethiopia. Aksum Kingdom, Ethiopia, right? Well, that's funny. Who do those people look like? That's really funny. And who do those people look like? Uh-oh. Governor of Aksum, Ethiopia. Uh-oh. Ethiopia. Kingdom of Aksum. The left one reads in Greek. King of Aksum. The right one reads in Greek. Ah, the King of Aksum. Uh-oh. Aksumite Empire. An era occurred. I bet an era did occur. I bet an era did occur. Okay, let's go back to reading. Okay, let's go back. Around 960, Queen Gudit destroyed the remnants of the kingdom of Aksum. The remnants of Aksum. Around 960, Queen Gudit destroyed the remnants of the kingdom of Aksum, causing a shift in its temporal power center that later regrouped more to the south. For 40 years, she ruled over what remained of the kingdom, eventually passing on the throne to her descendants. According to other Ethiopian traditional accounts, the last of her dynasty was overthrown by Mara Takla, Hayamanat, Hemanat in 1137. Now, I don't care for BC and I don't care for AD. I care for 0 on up. And to me, this is 1137. All right. He married a daughter of the last king of Aksum. All right. So, who, overthrown by Mara Takla, he married a daughter. So I guess Mara Takla marries a daughter of the last king of Aksum, which is these people. Dil Naod putting control of Ethiopia in Agar hands. Well, what is Agar? Okay, search for Agar. People. Travel around the world, Asia, America, Africa, Australia. Agar people. Agar people. Why do people hate the Agars? Agar people. The blend are 50% Muslim and 50% Christians, but they all dress the same, similar to Islamic fashion. The picture was taken at a Christian holiday in Karen. So these are Agars. Okay. Children belonging to the Agar people. Okay. Oromo traditional Iricha celebration in London. Okay, that's not helpful. Let's see. Agar Kamant Nation. Unite for self-determination. Kushite. Agar Kamant Nation. Kushite. And of course they got the Ankh emblem there, don't they? Unite for self-determination. Uh-oh. See, we got something here. I see we got something here. Let's go back. So we see the Agar now, alright? Since he married Emperor Dil Naod's daughter, who was a member of the Solomonic dynasty. The Zogs are technically part of the Solomonic lineage. The Zogwis are technically... Doesn't these names sound like the quote-unquote native names of this land? Isn't that something funny? How the names sound a lot alike. I'm just saying. Technically part of the Solomonic lineage, Emperor Mara Tekla Hemanat's marriage and offspring therefore makes him the only emperor without known ties to the biblical King Solomon and Makeda, the Queen of Sheba. Although his own ancestry is unknown, the Zagwe period is still shrouded in mystery. Even the number of kings in this dynasty is disputed. Some sources, such as the Paris Chronicle and manuscripts, Bruce 88, 91, and 93, give the names of 11 kings who ruled for 354 years. Others among them, the book Pedro Paez and Manuel de Almeida saw at Aksum, list only 5 who ruled 143. Paul B. Hens reports the existence of at least one list containing 16 names. According to Carlo Conti Rossini, the shorter length of this dynasty was the more likely one. He argues that a letter Rossini, right, of course, received the Patriarch of Alexandria, John, shortly before 1150 from an unnamed Ethiopian monarch, in which the Patriarch is asked for a new Abuna because of the current office holder was too old, was from Maratakla Hamanat, who wanted the Abuna replaced because he would not. Alright, who wanted the Abuna replaced? The mystery of the Zog dynasty is perhaps darkest around its replacement by the revived Solomonic dynasty under Yekuno Amlak. The name of the last Zog king is lost. The surviving chronicles and oral traditions give his name as Za Imaknun, which is clearly a pseudonym. Tadesi Tamrat translate it as the unknown, the hidden one, employed soon after his reign by the victorious Solomonic rulers in an act of damnatio memoria. Tadesi Tamrat believes that this last ruler was actually Yet Barak. The end of the Zagwe came when Yekuno Amlak, who proclaimed himself the descendant and rightful heir of Dilnaod, and acting under the guidance of either Saint Tekle Hamanat or Saint Jesus. Is that Jesus? Saint Jesus? Well, I don't know. Let's take a look. Jesus Moa. Jesus has conquered. Come on, man. You fucking serious, man. It's funny, right? Jesus. I didn't expect to read any of this stuff, man. I was just looking through a few things, and now that I'm reading, you guys are getting surprised like I'm getting surprised. It is what it is. Fuck it, we'll continue. Jesus has conquered. 1214 to 1294. Now, again, I don't believe in fucking B, C, A, D, B, D, B, K, Y, C, P. I don't care for the alphabets, right? I just look at the numbers, and that's 1214 to 1294. Is a saint of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Now, you know what? I'm thinking now when I look at those words like Tenochtitlan and stuff like that and all those names out there, I'm wondering if you had a quote-unquote African person that lives over there today to pronounce it, what it would sound like, you know, because I'm seeing some things that just resemble, and it is what it is. Let's just go. All right, his feast day is 26 Hadar, or the 5th of December. In life, he was an Ethiopian monk and abbot. Now, what are abbots? You know, when you go into the Chinese culture, an abbot's that bald-headed monk that's the leader of the school, right? And you saw the other video where I showed you the old people of the Shaolin and how they were blacks, right? Negroes. So an Ethiopian monk, all right? Now you got Chinese monks and abbots. Well, Ethiopian monk and abbot of Stephanos Monastery in Lake Hayek of Ambasel. He was born in Dahena, which may have been the Warida in the Wag Himra zone, although GWB Huntingford identifies it with Dana. You know that sounds familiar to me, right? A village 15 miles east of the Tekezi River. At the age of 30, Jesus has conquered. Jesus traveled to the monastery of Debre Damo during the abbacy of Abba Yohannes, General Yohanna, right? Come on now, where we seen that at? Where he was made a monk and was given arduous tasks by the abbot. Yo, go look at a Shaolin Kung Fu movie from back in the day, right? Because right now it's playing in my head. Amitabha, you know, and they're talking to the abbot, and they got the little incense burning in the little temple with the big golden Buddha and shit, you know what I'm saying? And he's like, you want to learn to be a Shaolin master, you know, that shit. Yeah, I watched that shit. But given artist tasked by the abbot, we're going to get your training right. You'll be a Shaolin master in no time. After 7 years, he left Debradamo and came to live with a hermetic community living around the 8th century church of Istanafanos at Lake Hike, and organized this group into a monastery with rules and a school. One of the students of the school was Saint Tekle Hayamanat, who stayed at the monastery for 10 years. One of the Zagwe kings later made him abbot of this monastery. Alright, his biography, the Gadla Jesus, Acts of Jesus, records that Yakunu Amlak had fled from the authorities in Ambasel and hid in the church because of a prophecy. Jesus hid in the church because of prophecy? Huh? That he would become a king. His mother, upon hearing such prediction, brought him to Estefanos Monastery and begged the priest there to hide her son and save him from being killed. Jesus protected and educated the boy. Amlak was brought and hidden. Jesus protected him, right, in the monastery. And in return, Emperor Yakunu Amlak built the structure to house his community. Later, hagiographies state that Yakuno Amlak was helped by Tekle Hayamanat, but the critical researches of Carlo Conti Rosina suggest that the god Jesus is closer to the correct version of events. Alright, so we have a Jesus and he's an abbot at a Ethiopian temple, right? And I don't mean the Chinese ones in the karate flicks, but well, yeah, there's a Jesus and he's an abbot. He's the head priest, right? An abbot. All right, that was very interesting. Kind of refreshing to see that. All right, so Jesus pursued the last king of the Zagwe and killed him. Jesus pursued the last king of the Zagwe and killed him at the church of Saint Kirkos in Ghent on the north side of the Bashilo River. Whoa, see what happens when you mess with a Shaolin monk, especially an abbot. You better watch the movies, man. Abbot kick ass. Shit, you run up on an abbot, man, they hit you with the 45 Buddha palm fist, Shaolin uppercut. I mean, they hit you with everything. You gotta watch out. Jesus was a bad mother sucker, huh? That head abbot. That's, oh boy, I'm tripping right now. All right, let's continue. All right, so we saw that. All right, the Ottoman Caliphate. No, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Mustafa, no, not there yet. Ahmed, the Solomonic dynasty, right? Alright, so the Solomonic dynasty, also known as the House of Solomon, is the former ruling imperial house of the Ethiopian Empire. Alright, its members claim patrilineal descent from King Solomon of Israel and the Queen of Sheba. Tradition asserts that the queen gave birth to Menelik I after her biblically described visit to Solomon in Jerusalem. King Solomon of Israel, Solomonic dynasty, also known as the House of Solomon, is the former ruling imperial house of the Ethiopian Empire. Whoa, where is the Ethiopian Empire? Is this the Ethiopian Empire? Abyssinia? Because if that's the Ethiopian Empire, then what I'm reading here is saying that that's Jerusalem. I don't know. Is that what this is really saying? Tradition asserts that the queen gave birth to Menelik I after her biblically described visit to Solomon in Jerusalem. Solomonic dynasty, also known as the House of Solomon, is the former ruling imperial house of the Ethiopian Empire. The Solomonic dynasty was a bastion of Judaism. So when you hear about the Jew, they convert to the belief of Judaism, right? So the Solomonic dynasty was a bastion of, you know what? Let's get that. It wouldn't be right unless I did it. So let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. I don't sing. I just, I'm just playing around. You guys are having fun. But let's just get this information. So we want bastion, 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 bastion. What is bastion? 1560 from Middle French Bastillon, diminutive of Old French Bastille, fortress, tower, fortified building. Okay, fortress. Right. Let's go back. The Solomonic dynasty was a fortress of Judaism and later of Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. It is considered to have ruled Ethiopia in the 10th century BC. 1000, right? 1000. I'm dealing with numbers. I don't care about the BC shit. 0, 1000. No, that still wouldn't be right. Well, yeah. Centuries every 100 years. Yeah. So that'd be 1000. Yeah. Records of the dynasty's history were reported to have been maintained by the Ethiopian Orthodox monasteries. And a monastery, and there we have the abbot, which is head of the monastery, which you find also in China, the monasteries with their abbots, right? To near antiquity. However, if such records existed, most were lost as a result of the destruction of Orthodox monasteries by the resurgent Judaic Judith I. Yakuno Amlak I reestablished a dynasty tracing his ancestry to the last Solomonic king of Aksum. So the Solomonic king, right, King Solomon, right, Aksum, and we know Aksum is, where did Aksum go? Aksuma, right, Aksum, these are the Aksum, alright, we're right here, the last Solomonic king of Aksum, Dil Nead. The dynasty reestablished itself on Tin Nehas, 1262. 1270, when Yakuno Amlak overthrew the last ruler of the Zog dynasty. Yakuno Amlak claimed direct male line descendant from the old Aksumite royal house that the Zagwis had replaced on the throne. Okay, royal house that the Zagwis had replaced on the throne. Okay, so the Zagwis overthrew the Aksumites. Well, what's the Zagwis? Let's look at that, because I don't think I pulled that up. Zagwis people images. Africans, can you tell what tribe or country? Diasporans. Okay. Zagwe dynasty, 15th century icon of Gebre Mesquel Lalibela. 12th century Zagwe dynasty king who is credited with having constructed the rock-hewn churches, right? We already saw that. Alright, these are Zagwis. In the later years of the Zagwe dynasty, towards the end of the 12th and the beginning of the 13th century, when Ethiopian rulers were once again religion in Ethiopia, the rock-hewn church of St. George in Lalibela. Oh, I saw this, wow. I saw this on Ancient Aliens. That's where I saw this. Right? Yeah, I watched that show. I do. But I saw this there. They really carved this out of stone. That is like, whoa. They carved it out of stone. That's like, whoa. Wow. 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 Now, you see, when we go back into the Old Testament, it says make altars out of hewn, right? Which basically means to carve it out of rock. You know, so if you look at this image, you can see that the land is a little bit lower, but they've carved down, like they've literally carved down. This is just amazing. This might be a whole video to itself one day, because that's pretty amazing. Let's see. Yeah, Agal people, right? Bet Emmanuel Church in La Libella, one of several rock-hewn churches. Several! They did several. Look at that. That about something. They literally carved the stone. Alright, I'm getting off track. That's very interesting. Africans can, okay, that doesn't help me. Okay, that didn't help me at all. Lebna Dengel, Emperor of Ethiopia and a member of the Solomonic dynasty. Oh, okay. So we have a member of the Solomonic dynasty, and it's an Afro dude, alright? Alright, so, okay. We got a little bit of that. Let's continue reading. So, Yakuno Amlak claimed direct male line descent from the old Zumite royal house that the Zagwis had replaced on the throne. So the Zagwis replaced the... Hold on one second. So the Zagwis replaced descendant from the old Axumite royal house. Who replaced on the throne Menelik II, and later his daughter Zuditu the first would be the last Ethiopian monarchs who could claim uninterrupted direct male descent from Solomon of Israel and the Queen of Sheba. Both Yesu and Haile Selassie were in the female line. Yesu through his mother Shuwarega Menelik, and Haile Selassie through his paternal grandmother Tenagniwerk Selassie. Oh wow, that's just whew, I'll tear that name up. The male line through the descendants of Menelik's cousins Dejazmach say Gilead still existed, but had been pushed aside largely because of Menelik's personal distaste from this branch of his family. The Solomonic dynasty continued to rule Ethiopia with few interruptions until 1974, when the last emperor, Haile Selassie, was deposed. The royal family is currently 9 regnant members of the family in Ethiopia at the time of the 1974 revolution were imprisoned. Some were executed and others exiled. In 1976, 10 great-grandchildren of Haile Selassie were extracted from Ethiopia in an undertaking later detailed in a book by Jody Collins titled Code Word Catherine. The women of the dynasty were released by the regime from prison in 1989, and the men were released in 1990. Several members were then allowed to leave the country in mid-1990, and the rest left in 91 upon the fall of the communist regime. Many members of the imperial family have since returned to live in Ethiopia. During much of the dynasty's existence, its effective realm was the northwestern quadrant of present-day Ethiopia, the Ethiopian highlands. The empire expanded and contracted over the centuries, sometimes incorporating parts of modern-day Sudan and South Sudan and coastal areas of the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Southern and eastern regions were permanently incorporated during the last 2 centuries, some of Shiwan kings and some emperors of Menelik and Haile Selassie. Although much of the central and southern regions were previously incorporated into the empire under Amda Sayan and Zara Yaqub. It's funny. Peripheral areas were lost after the invasion of Ahmad Grog. Invasions of Ahmad. This video is going to get real long quick. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video here because I will be clicking for the next 2 to 3 hours just going over all this stuff. So I'm just going to cut this video right here, and this is going to be part 1 I don't know, Negro history. Part 1 of Negro history. I don't know, Negro history part 1. Negro history meets Bible history. I don't know. History investigation part 1. There it is. We're going to be a history investigation. part 1. So I'm gonna stop the video right here, and I'm gonna leave all this, and I'm gonna continue digging. Make sure I know to dig from here, right? And I'll continue digging and doing more videos on this. So this is what is this video? I don't know. I'll come up with a name. This is gonna be part 1.